considering the literary language techniques that are used in this story, first of all, I think it's very important to say that it is ironic that the real racism the girls experience at the camp is that only the special needs white girls are sent to the camp at the same time as the black girls, when it first appears that the racism in the story was the name calling. Right? That caught our attention because it seems to be common. Right? It's something that should not be done at all, and yet, it doesn't surprise anybody, and that's what we're prepared for, the racism that we see in this story. And then we find out, wait a minute, is that in fact the terrible racism? No, it's something else. So, however, while the girl who said the N-word, if she really did, since no one but Arnetta seems to have heard it, Daphne gives a nod like she did, but it still seems to be a little bit questionable. There's a little bit of ambiguity there. And then, after this, the white Brownie troop leader is pointing out about the girls and how there's the echolalia and, one of them doesn't talk and, different things like that. Arnetta there is kind of pointing at different girls who could have said it. She said, this one did it, or this one did it. But she doesn't seem to really be able to say it definitively, where we believe her beyond a shadow of a doubt. So even though the little girl may have been innocently echoing the word, she may have actually said it, she had to have heard someone say it first. So even though she is innocent, as a child who has special needs and may not be aware of the insult that she is putting out there, in fact, the person who said it originally that she heard may have had full knowledge and full intent of insulting someone by using that term. And then, if you think about the language that Laurel uses to describe the white girls in Troop 909, you can see that this language shows that her perception of them is formed by the media, because she doesn't know white girls personally. Her knowledge of them comes from television, movies, and books, but not from actual, again, being up close and personal in everyday life. So, in addition, to what the quote I've already put in about what she says about their hair, Laurel says, "We'd seen them, but from afar, never within their orbit enough to see whether their faces were the way all white girls appeared on TV, ponytailed and full of energy, bubbling over with love and money." So, of course, that is an unrealistic understanding of the lives of white girls. Right? There's some that may have that, but not certainly all. And then we have at the end of the story, almost at the end of the story, there is an allusion to the mall in Buckhead. And if you know about Atlanta, if you're familiar with Atlanta, you may know this already. But Buckhead is a very affluent area in the northern part of Atlanta. And this is where Arnetta says, "My mama and I were in the mall in Buckhead, and this white lady just kept looking at us. I mean, like we were foreign or something, like we were from China." Okay. So again, you get that separation where just as the black girls in the Brownie troop see whites as other, when Arnetta with her mother in the mall, obviously this white lady sees them as other. So both sides, right? There's not a coming together, but there is a separation, a distance. This author uses similes throughout the story that are very strong and vivid, just as in several of the other stories that we've read, such as Greasy Lake and Two Kinds. Janice says, when they're trying to plan what they're going to do to retaliate against the white girls, she says, "Then we're going to beat them up till they're as flat as frying pans." So we get a nice picture in our brains there. Or at the beginning, when she's talking about the girls after what Mrs. Margolin, she describes Mrs. Margolin, she says, the girls in my troop turned elastic. Drimma and Elise doubled up on one another like inextricably intertwined kites. So you can see the girls, right, all entangled with one another. And then when they're talking about the girls in Brownie Troop 909 that they're seeing there on the grounds from kind of a distance, when the leader, they say, is lying there on a blanket, eating a banana, I think. But they see the girls out there, and she says, a few seem to be lolling their heads in slow circles, half purposely, as if exercising the muscles of their necks, half ecstatically, like Stevie Wonder. Okay, so if you've ever seen Stevie Wonder perform, you know how he moves his neck and head, which comes probably partially from just the music, and partially from, of course, being blind. And so, having a different maybe kind of perception, of himself and how he functions in the world as than people who have sight. But that may be also, in addition to being a really nice simile, maybe a little hint in where Stevie Wonder has a problem with eyesight. That these little girls, how they're moving their heads in these slow circles, that maybe they're not just out there playing as girls who weren't mentally challenged would be. Humor. Have a question mark here because I want you to tell me about the humor in our discussion board activity for this week. But there are, I think, some really good examples of humor throughout the story, and maybe even the one that we can see up here with how they're going to, beat them up till they're as flat as frying pans. Right, that comment. But again, others. It takes a humorous tack several times. And then symbolism. Right? There can be different ways that you could view the camp. Right? What is it supposed to be saying? Is it a symbol of childhood innocence that then, of course, is kind of tainted then by adult prejudices and perceptions of people? Could it be saying something about nature and how nature should be good and healthy and positive, and should be a place where you would find growth and make new relationships in a kind of a pure, pristine kind of place and in the city. But then it comes to find out that it seems to be very just the same, right? Where you run into the same kind of issues in the country as you would in the city. You could read it many different ways. And then for the themes in this story, well, it's important to be part of a community, but this can cause a loss of individuality as well as the inability to trust those outside the group. Right? And so we kind of see that Laurel, when she doesn't want to go, but they're like, you're coming, Arnetta is telling her, you're coming, and she also is there, you're not going to tell on us, right? You're not going to tell. So even though Laurel might not want to be going to confront those white girls, however, she does want to be a part of the community. But again, maybe she can't be totally herself if she's willing to do that. And then, of course, the division, having to see those who aren't in your group as outsiders, as others, and not, again, accepting them for who they are. Also, there can be a powerful pressure to go along with the members of a group, even when someone knows that it is not the right thing to do or what she or he wants to do. Peer pressure can make people do things that they really weren't planning on doing after all. But again, they want to be part of the group so badly. Then there's something that makes people dislike those who are different from themselves, and also makes those who suffer discrimination harbor grudges and try to settle old scores whenever opportunity presents itself. So, there's something about humans, how they want to form a group, but then when they form a group, they want to have not only then the people who are inside their group, they want to differentiate themselves, and they want to reject those who aren't in their group for whatever reason it might be. Color of their skin, religion. They don't like the same kind of music. They don't, have the same taste in sports, whatever it might be, right? There's an insider-outsider mentality. And then finally, archetypes. So initiation into adulthood. So it's kind of similar to two kinds, where it's not like they're old enough to really move from a teenage childhood into an adult, really a total situation. However, although Laurel is still a child at the end of the story, she's learned a lesson that moves her closer to adulthood. Now, racism is a terrible thing, and it corrupts those who are the usual victims as much as it corrupts the usual perpetrators. Sad lesson of a child realizing, again, this is what life is like. And then finally, a journey. I wouldn't say it's a hero's journey in the same way that this is what it means to, say, Phoenix, Arizona, but a journey, nevertheless, of learning something. So Laurel travels to camp, and then she returns home. So there is that circularness of it. But she travels to the camp and returns home after learning a sad lesson about human nature. So she did learn something that she will be able to take with her, and she thinks that there's just something mean in the world, and so how do you kind of deal with that? How do you try to make the world maybe not as mean? How do you adjust your views of yourself and others, and try to mitigate that in some way?